It started like every other evening. Laughter echoing through the locker room, the air thick with sweat and victory. You remember the smell of wet jersey, the sound of cleats scraping tile, the careless way they slapped your back and called you brother. For a moment, it felt real. You thought you were part of something that couldn't break. But loyalty dies quietly, doesn't it? Not with a shout, but with a whisper. A message leaked. A private moment turned into public theater. They took your words, the ones you spoke in trust, and twisted them into weapons. One by one, the smiles turned into smirks. You walked in on your own execution, and everyone was laughing. The sound cut through you sharper than any blade. They performed your pain like it was a joke. You saw your reflection in their eyes. Not a teammate, not a friend, just a story to tell. Someone filmed it, of course. The clip spread faster than truth ever could. You didn't even need to look at your phone to know. The silence afterwards said everything. You became a warning, not a person. The kind people avoid so they don't catch your fate. And in that silence, something ancient stirred beneath your humiliation. A part of you older than fear, quieter than rage. The instinct to survive. You wanted to scream, to defend yourself, to prove them wrong. But you didn't. You just stood there, pulse pounding, skin burning, pretending you couldn't feel the cracks forming inside your chest. That was the night innocence died. The moment your reflection stopped looking back with softness. You learned that not all knives shine. Some wear familiar faces. You learned that betrayal isn't loud. It's strategic, surgical. They didn't just want to hurt you. They wanted to erase you, to make you question your worth until you turned the blade inward. And for a while it worked. You walked home through a world that suddenly looked different. Every light harsher, every voice colder. The air itself seemed to carry judgment. You replayed every moment, every handshake, every laugh, searching for the signs you missed. They were always there, weren't they? Hidden behind compliments that felt slightly off, smiles that didn't reach the eyes. You realize now they were studying you, learning your weaknesses, taking notes for the day they'd need a sacrifice to keep their own secrets safe. You just happened to be convenient. That night sleep never came. You lay in the dark, hearing echoes of laughter crawl up your spine. The mind is cruel. It replays the worst parts on loop, slowing them down until every frame becomes torture. But inside that replay, something shifts. The pain becomes data. You start analyzing instead of drowning. You start remembering their words, their patterns, their alliances. You see the power dynamic for what it was, a hierarchy disguised as friendship. And at the bottom of it stood you, too loyal, too open, too predictable, the perfect target. It's strange how betrayal clarifies everything. The world that once felt warm now shows its machinery, the gears, the transactions hidden beneath affection. You see how power works. It feeds on nana vide. It demands sacrifice. And that night you stopped being one. You stood in front of the mirror, eyes hollow but awake. The humiliation didn't fade. It calcified. It became armor. You realized they didn't just break you. They built the version of you that no longer bleeds for approval. You won't forget that laughter. It's branded into your skull, a reminder of what happens when you trust too easily. But one day, they'll hear silence where your name used to be, and that silence will terrify them, because they'll know what it means. The same presence they mocked is now studying, calculating, waiting. Not for revenge, but for mastery. They stopped calling your name. The same mouths that once praised you now choke on your silence. You check your phone. Nothing. No messages. No invites. Just a screen that used to light up with laughter and plans. The air feels heavier now, as if every breath carries the weight of what they took from you. You replay their faces in your head, those smiles that looked genuine until you realized they were masks. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was quiet, surgical, precise. They didn't stab you in the back. They drained you slowly until you couldn't recognize the person you'd become. You tell yourself it's fine, that you don't care. But at night, when everything slows down, the silence crawls beneath your skin and whispers names you swore you'd forgotten. You start noticing the details, how the world moves on without you. The group you built now thrives without your presence. They use your ideas, your energy, your words, but erase your name like it never existed. You scroll through their stories and feel that cold ache deep inside, the kind that burns without flame. You want to scream. You want to make them see what they've done. But then it hits you. They already know. They wanted this. They wanted to watch you fall, not because you failed, but because you reminded them of everything they never had the strength to be. You became the mirror they couldn't stand to look into. And mirrors, they break them before they face themselves. Days blend together. You stop keeping track of time. The world feels like a hallway with no exit. Each day another loop of quiet madness. You still go through the motions, eat, work, sleep, repeat. But your body feels hollow, like it's running on fumes of what once was. You catch yourself talking less, smiling less. You start measuring your words, your reactions, because you know the world isn't listening. It's observing, waiting for another weakness to expose. You look in the mirror and see someone else staring back. Someone tired, someone raw, someone dangerous. And then something shifts. You begin to understand that this silence, this emptiness, isn't punishment, it's purification. The noise had to die for the truth to surface. You start to see the betrayal for what it was, a cleansing fire. It burned away your illusions, your attachments, your dependence on people who were never meant to understand you. You realize the cruelty of it all was necessary, almost divine, because only destruction could show you what was real. The pain taught you something no comfort ever could. That survival isn't about being loved. It's about being unbreakable when no one's watching. You stop reaching out. You stop explaining yourself. The absence that once terrified you now becomes your weapon. You start to move differently, slower, sharper. Like a hunter in familiar woods, you observe before you act. You calculate before you speak. You don't crave their approval anymore. You study it, dissect it, learn from it. You see the world as it truly is, a system built on leverage and illusion. And for the first time, you're not a piece on the board. You're learning how to play. At night, you still feel the loneliness pressing down on your chest, but it doesn't scare you anymore. You sit in it. You let it burn through you like a forge shaping steel. Every moment of silence adds another layer of armor. Every ignored call becomes another lesson in control. You don't chase closure now. You create distance. You don't seek revenge. You gather information. The fall wasn't the end. It was the transformation. Because they thought they buried you. But they forgot. Seeds only grow in darkness. You stare into the mirror and barely recognize the shape staring back. The light flickers. A cheap bulb humming like it knows your secrets. The reflection isn't you. It's the version they created, the one molded by mockery and stripped of certainty. You search the glass for traces of who you were before it all cracked. The laughter, the whispers, the betrayal, they still echo in your skull. But tonight, something shifts. There's no sadness left, no trembling under the weight of their judgment, just quiet. The kind of quiet that follows a battlefield after the smoke clears. You realize this is what death feels like. Not the kind that takes breath, but the kind that takes illusion. You've buried the version of yourself that begged for understanding, the one that thought kindness was a shield. That person died the moment you saw mercy weaponized against you. The mirror doesn't lie. It shows the crime scene. The fingerprints of every person who shaped your downfall are invisible, but they're there, pressed deep into the reflection. You see it now, every scar, every sleepless night, every unanswered call. Proof that they broke something sacred, proof that you survived. The silence between your thoughts grows sharp. You understand what the mirror's been trying to tell you all along: no one is coming. There are no heroes, no rescuers, no second chances hiding behind the door. Only you, standing ankle deep in the wreckage, holding the knife they left in your back. You could drop it, forgive them, move on, but you don't. You grip it tighter, because forgiveness isn't strength, it's surrender. You don't want peace, you want clarity, you want precision, the kind that cuts through delusion like a blade through fog. You step closer. The reflection steps closer too, but its eyes are colder now. You realize you've been talking to yourself all along. The real self, the one you kept chained under politeness and doubt. It speaks without words. It tells you that suffering is currency, and you've paid in full. That pain isn't your punishment, it's your passport. The moment you accept that, everything changes. The betrayal that once haunted you becomes data. Every insult turns into coordinates. Every loss transforms into leverage. You no longer crave to be seen, you crave to see. Somewhere in that stillness, power is born. Not loud, not desperate, but surgical. You start to remember things they hoped you'd forget. How they smirked when you failed. How they looked away when you fell. Each memory sharpens you. The reflection no longer hurts to look at, it humbles you. You were not meant to be understood. You were meant to be studied. They mistook your silence for weakness. Not knowing silence is where strategy breathes. You start to smile not out of joy but awareness. They created the wound. You became the weapon. Outside, the world keeps spinning, but you've stopped chasing its rhythm. You don't seek validation anymore. You seek vengeance, not through violence but through evolution. You no longer talk about your pain. You encrypt it. You turn it into focus. You strip emotion until only precision remains. You become a ghost to their expectations, a storm moving under calm skies. And when you finally step away from the mirror, it doesn't feel like walking. It feels like awakening. You leave the room without a word. The mirror trembles behind you, reflecting nothing. The version of you that needed their approval stays trapped inside, fading into the glass. Outside, the air tastes different, colder, cleaner, sharper. You don't belong to them anymore. You belong to the fire that forged you. You stop talking. Words are for people who still need to explain themselves. You've passed that stage. The noise of betrayal used to echo in your head like a crowd that wouldn't leave after the game ended. But now silence is your gym. Every morning begins before light touches the earth, not because you want to prove something, but because darkness has become your ally. You move through it like a ghost that no longer asks for permission to exist. The pain that used to haunt you now sharpens you. You no longer chase comfort, you chase clarity. You no longer seek approval, you build endurance. Each breath burns, each repetition feels like punishment, but you welcome it because it means you're still alive. Your hands blister against the weight, your muscles tremble, but the tremor feels sacred, like a confession whispered to the universe that you refuse to die ordinary. The body becomes an altar, the grind a form of prayer. You sweat not for recognition but for resurrection. No one's watching, and that's the point. You train in the shadows, where applause doesn't exist, where mirrors don't flatter, where failure is not shame but scripture. Every scar becomes scripture too, written proof that you met pain and didn't flinch. You learn the discipline of staying unseen, of building in silence while others scroll, laugh, and waste their war on distraction. You've stopped needing noise to feel alive. You've become addicted to the quiet suffering that only the chosen can bear. Before, you begged for motivation. Now you summon it like a storm. You've learned that strength isn't something you find. It's something you extract violently from your own weakness. The grind isn't about progress anymore. It's about purification. You start to enjoy the hunger, the emptiness, the ache. It's no longer punishment. It's proof that you're still becoming. While they rest, you rehearse your resurrection. While they celebrate, you calculate. While they sleep, you burn. The calendar doesn't exist for you anymore. Days blur into a single pulse train. Endure, adapt, evolve. You no longer measure growth by results, but by what it costs you to keep going. You start noticing things, patterns in your own suffering. Pain speaks a language only the disciplined can understand. It whispers warnings, strategies, coordinates. Every setback hides a secret. Every moment of doubt reveals an enemy within. You dissect it all. Emotions, routines, impulses, like a surgeon with no anesthesia. You become fluent in restraint. You understand the value of saying nothing, of keeping your plans sealed in silence until they hatch into inevitability. Your enemies mistake your stillness for surrender, not realizing that stillness is strategy. The serpent moves slow before it strikes. The lion doesn't roar while stalking its prey. The grind is no longer about them. It's about you against your past self. A duel in the dark where hesitation dies first. You stop reacting to the world and start designing it. Every repetition, every bruise, every lonely night becomes a declaration you're done being who they remember. The boy they mocked, the friend they betrayed, the dreamer they laughed at, he's gone. In his place stands something colder, smarter, sharper. You've learned the oldest rule of survival. The world only respects results it can't explain. So you give them silence. You give them mystery, you give them fear. They won't see the moment you become unstoppable. There will be no announcement, no fanfare, no revenge speech. Just one day, they'll notice the shift, the same way prey notices the shadow right before the strike. You'll walk past them, not with pride, but precision, because the grind wasn't about winning. It was about becoming untouchable. They thought they ended you. They thought the silence meant surrender. But in that silence, something ancient woke up inside you, something primal, patient, and precise. You stopped bleeding emotions and started bleeding purpose. The old version of you, desperate for approval, terrified of being misunderstood, was burned in the same fire they mocked you with. Every insult became kindling, every betrayal a spark, and when it was over, there was nothing left but steel and intention. You didn't survive the fire, you became it. You learned that transformation isn't beautiful. It's violent. It tears through you like war, stripping away illusions, pride, and everything soft that once begged for mercy. Nights turned into interrogations. You sat across from your own reflection asking, who am I without their validation? The answer came wordless, through calloused hands, sleepless mornings, a jaw clenched until it hurt. You realized that pain was not your enemy. It was the architect, the destroyer that builds, the unseen force that melts away everything that isn't meant to last. You stopped asking for healing. You started demanding evolution. They thought you'd fade quietly, buried under shame. Instead, you weaponized it. You took their laughter, their rumors, their absence, and turned them into data. You studied the anatomy of your downfall like a crime scene. Every mistake cataloged, every weakness mapped. You became a strategist of your own suffering. They played for attention. You played for eternity. You understood that silence is not absence, it's incubation. The lion doesn't roar while it's stalking. The blade doesn't gleam while it's being forged. You kept your fire invisible, so when you finally moved, it wasn't noise they felt, it was heat. You started moving differently. No more explanations, no more proving, just cold precision, the kind that unnerves people because they can't trace where it comes from. Your eyes no longer beg to be understood, they calculate. Your words cut slower, deeper, as if each syllable carries the weight of buried storms. You stopped reacting to insults because you understood something deeper. People attack what they fear might expose them. And now you expose them without saying a word. Your composure became the loudest scream they'd ever hear. Some nights, the darkness still visits, not as an enemy but as an ally. It whispers, remember when you begged for them to see you, and you smirk. Because now you see everything. You see the patterns, the manipulations, the fragile egos hiding behind fake laughter. You see how chaos consumes those who can't master it. But you learn to eat chaos for breakfast. You don't run from storms anymore. You walk through them, unflinching. Every drop that used to drown you now fuels your fire. You don't crave light. You are the light that burns too bright for the unready. You don't speak of revenge anymore. That would be too small. Revenge means they still matter. What you built now, the discipline, the stillness, the terrifying calm, isn't about them. It's about what they unlocked. They thought they buried you under mockery, but they didn't realize you were a seed. They gave you darkness, and you made it holy. You gave your scars purpose, your silence authority, your pain direction. Now every move you make feels surgical, a quiet war declared through self-control. They thought the fire destroyed you, but fire doesn't destroy. It reveals what's indestructible, and that is you. They don't laugh anymore when you walk in. The air changes first. It thickens, tightens, recognizes something it can't name but instinctively fears. You can feel their eyes studying, recalculating, trying to understand how the same person they discarded now stands like a loaded weapon disguised as calm. You don't speak. You don't need to. Power doesn't announce itself. It radiates. You once begged for space in their circle. Now they shift uncomfortably when you enter the room. The silence between you is the same silence they gave you, except now it belongs to you. Once you chased their approval, you folded yourself into smaller versions, smiled when they lied, nodded when you disagreed, desperate to belong. That person is gone. The one standing here doesn't chase. He attracts not through charm, but through presence. Every scar became an instruction manual for dominance. Every sleepless night rewired your instincts for precision. You used to ask why they turned on you. Now you know weakness threatens the weak. They saw your potential before you did, and they feared it. That's why they buried you. They thought soil meant death. They forgot it's where roots are born. Now your silence is strategy. You don't explain. You don't defend. You don't argue in circles with people who already decided who you were. You just work. in shadows and solitude, until the results start whispering louder than your words ever could. You've mastered the rarest form of power, restraint. You watch them stumble over explanations when your success appears, unexpected, undeniable. They call it luck, timing, coincidence, anything but what it truly is, consequence, because deep down they know. Every time they laughed, every time they doubted, they were building the pressure that forged you. You walk differently now, not arrogant, calculated, like a chess piece that finally understands its movement. Every conversation feels like a quiet test. You see through tone, through hesitation, through the flicker of guilt in their eyes. You used to think betrayal was personal. It's not, it's structural. It's how the world filters the unready from the ruthless. Those who crumble feed those who climb. And you climbed one scar at a time, one humiliation per step, until the summit stopped feeling like victory and started feeling like clarity. You no longer crave their applause because you understand the economy of attention. Noise is currency for the powerless, silence for the dangerous. You've turned invisibility into armor. When they gossip, you strategize. When they doubt, you refine. They can't track you anymore because you erased the map. The version of you they betrayed doesn't exist, and that's what unsettles them most. They can't punish what no longer feels pain. You became a ghost in their narrative, haunting them with quiet success. They whisper now, careful with your name. Some pretend they always believed in you. Others avoid you altogether, afraid you might mirror their own cowardice back at them. You let them talk. You let them rewrite history. You've outgrown the need to correct them. Power is knowing you could destroy and choosing not to. You learned that revenge is loud, but dominance is silent. The real victory isn't watching them fall, it's watching yourself rise without flinching. You've crossed the threshold between who you were and what you became. There's no return. You carry something ancient now, the stillness of a storm that's already passed, the discipline of a warrior who no longer fights for recognition, but alignment. You've become what they feared most, proof that suffering isn't a wound, it's initiation. They thought they'd broken you, but all they did was train you. You sit in silence, and for the first time in your life, the quiet doesn't scare you, it obeys you. The same silence that once mocked you when they turned their backs has become your crown. You used to drown in it, desperate for noise, for validation, for proof that you still mattered. But now silence bends around you like air bends around fire. You no longer chase recognition, you command presence. They used to fill the air with noise, gossip, laughter, lies, but you learned what they never could. True power doesn't announce itself, it waits, it watches, it endures. There was a time you needed them to see you, to understand what they did. You wanted to shout, to prove you survived their betrayal. But shouting is for the desperate. And you are no longer desperate, you are deliberate. You built yourself in the dark, and when you stepped back into the light, you didn't need applause, only the sound of your own calm breathing. That's the difference between then and now. They fought to be heard. You fought to become unignorable. The same people who dismissed you now whisper your name like a forbidden word. They don't even understand what changed. They think you got lucky, that something external shifted. But you know the truth. You shifted. You rewired your own mind, erased the programming that made you beg for belonging. You stopped explaining, stopped defending, stopped proving. You let their silence teach you. And through that silence, you became the storm they can't predict, the one they can't prepare for. Power changed its meaning for you. It's not about dominance anymore, it's about distance. You don't rise by fighting them, you rise by outlasting them. You realize that vengeance is loud, but victory is invisible. That's why you smile when they look confused by your calm. They don't see the years of endurance carved into your eyes. They see composure and mistake it for peace. They don't understand that you killed the version of yourself that needed comfort. You buried him quietly. No eulogy, no tears, just a clean break. Now, your movements are surgical. Every word is chosen. Every silence is intentional. You understand what the ancients knew, that a king who speaks too much loses the throne. Your restraint terrifies them because they can't measure you anymore. You became unpredictable, unreadable. You turned mystery into armor. You became fluent in patience, fluent in detachment. You don't chase closure, you create endings. You don't burn bridges, you let them decay while you build empires on the ashes. They used to mock your stillness, remember, called it weakness. They thought your distance meant defeat, but you were simply gathering power, consolidating energy, becoming something they couldn't categorize. You stopped existing in their story and started writing your own. That's why they flinch when you enter the room, because they can feel it now. The shift, the quiet authority, the unspoken knowing that you no longer play by their rules. You moved beyond revenge into something colder, cleaner. Strategy. Your eyes no longer search for who betrayed you. You already thank them, not with words, but with evolution. They forged the part of you that doesn't need the world to make sense. You learn to live without closure, to move without certainty, to build without approval. That's the real crown. The ability to stand alone without trembling. The ability to walk away while everyone else still begs to be understood. Now you sit where it all began. Same world, same chaos, but everything is different. The noise around you hasn't stopped, it's just no longer relevant. They wanted to see you break. Instead, they watched you disappear into discipline and return as myth. You became the rumor, the ghost in their system, the one they can't decode. And in your silence, there's no rage left, only precision. The crown doesn't shine, it waits in the shadows, exactly where they left you.